Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 651. Thursday, January the 3rd, 2019. 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, let's get to it. Well, a lot of people, of course, are pretty upset talking about Willard Mitwit Romney and what he did, writing that op-ed in the Washington Post. Well, he's definitely starting out on the wrong foot, wouldn't you say? So, a lot of people speculating today that this is Romney's first big move to lay the groundwork for a 2020 challenge, primary challenge to Trump. Boy, that's a tough one because, Romney is arrogant certainly enough to do that. He's certainly part of the deep state coup. Certainly he wants to do everything he can to make sure Trump is destroyed and can't be reelected. But I don't know that Romney is so far gone that he believes with Trump's popularity that he would have any type of a serious challenge, or any Republican for that matter, at Trump in the primary in 2020, unless he figures that he and his group have got a good enough offensive plan that they're going to be able to knock Trump's approval ratings down into the 20s before the 2020 primary would begin. And I guess if they could drive his poll numbers down far enough, he could be vulnerable to a challenge. But where he's sitting now in the mid-40s, I don't think they would take that very seriously. It doesn't surprise me. And in fact, I remember when Romney ran for that Senate seat, and I said, well, if he's running for it, he'll win it. It's in Utah. He's very popular in Utah. I thought at that time, why would Romney be interested in a Senate seat? He was a governor. He lost in running as a president. You don't normally see someone run for president, lose, and then run for another political office that's below that office. So it's pretty rare. So you almost get the feeling that that Romney was put in there or encouraged to become a senator so that he could continue the work of Senator Magoo, Corker, and Flake, now that they're gone. So maybe he's just the guy that they said, yeah, we need you on the inside, peppering Trump, so that maybe when 2020 rolls around, he can challenge Trump, and then they can get this chorus going that they can say, see, even Republicans are challenging Trump. Even they don't want Trump to help the Democrats to help do more damage. So the bottom line is to do everything they can to damage Trump any way they can. And if you can have someone like Mitt Romney working from the inside to try to drive Trump's poll numbers down, which is what all this is all going to be about. From today moving forward, once Nancy Pelosi takes over, the Democrats take over the Congress, with everything else that's going on, it's all designed. There's one main plan, one main thing that's in the works for the anti-Trump mafia, and what that is to destroy Trump, to drive him down so low in the polls, make him so unpopular that he cannot get reelected. I think that that's the underlying goal of all of these individuals, and Willard just plays right into that. So that's kind of my take on it. But I don't think it's going to be very popular. Now, they don't have a recall process in Utah. Otherwise, I'd be calling for someone in Utah to get the petition started to recall Willard. But you can't recall Willard in Utah. They don't have a recall, I don't think. They don't have a recall there. So, anyway, that's my take on it. I just think that Mitwit is there to try to just continue trying to attack Trump and try to drive his poll numbers down as part of the larger plan to destroy Trump and make sure that he does not get reelected to a second term. And I think that's what everything is going to be about from this point moving forward until 2020. But I expect Mitwit will face a lot of backlash within people in his own party, and he already has started receiving that backlash, and I think that will continue. But I don't think he cares, because I think his loyalty is to the establishment. And what's funny about this really is that when Mitwit ran, He's working on behalf of the establishment that hates Trump. But these are also the very same people that wouldn't throw their support behind him when he was running in the primary, because he's Mormon, and they were terrified that if he won the nomination, they wouldn't be able to get the Christian the Christian right out to vote, and that's a critical part of Republicans winning elections. They have to have big turnout from the Christian right. So I think that I think there's a lot of things going on here, but I think it was a bad move by Willard, and I think it will come back to bite him in the butt. And I really just don't think it's going to be all that effective. I mean, how effective was Magoo, Flake, Corker, and all the rest? They haven't been able to really put too much of a chink in Trump's armor, despite their best attempts. So we'll just keep watching. But I think that you can expect this is exactly what we can expect from Mitwit moving forward. This is exactly how he's going to act, and we all knew that going in, didn't we? Willard Mitwit Romney. What a loser. Well, Pelosi did her press conference today after that meeting in the White House, along with Chuck the Cuck and a couple of the other goons. And she's talking about the fact that they got a plan to open up some of these other agencies of the government. I don't think they get it. The point is to have the shutdown. That's the whole point. But that plan, of course, is dead on arrival. Trump said if it doesn't have money for the wall, forget it. And McConnell has said if it doesn't have money for the wall, I won't even bring it to the floor for a vote. So it's going nowhere. So, and Pelosi knows this, and Chuck the Cuck know this. It's just, this is their volley, back to Trump, because they want to try to control the narrative. That's going to be the whole battle. They understand this battle is a PR battle, and whoever controls the narrative is going to win. So that's all that's going on here. This will go nowhere, and they know it's going nowhere. They're quite aware of the fact. So they're not putting this plan up because they think it has a chance of getting voted on or anything like that. They're doing it just as the next move in the game. That's all that's going on there. We have Ocasio-Cortez and her group already becoming a thorn in the side of Nancy Pelosi, because on one of the main things that Pelosi wants to vote on is she wants this vote. She wants this vote to support PAYGO, which involves a lot of things. I'll spare you the details, but it basically would the main thing it would suspend having to observe the federal debt limit. It would remove having to follow the debt limit, the debt ceiling, remove the debt ceiling. No more debt ceiling. That's what Pelosi's pushing for. Now, Ocasio-Cortez is basically doesn't like a lot of things in this PAYGO bill, so she and her little caucus that she has put together to oppose leadership, that would be Nancy, to oppose leadership, this is their first volley. So from the very get-go, from Jump Street, here we have Ocasio-Cortez and her little group already making life very difficult for Nancy Pelosi on her very first vote. You can expect more of that, by the way. Then we have Elizabeth Warren. She's saying that now that she's not totally embracing this new Green Deal, which is something that Pelosi gave to this group of far left wingers that just got elected and now control 95 votes in the Democrat House caucus. The largest caucus there is now is this far left group headed up by Ocasio-Cortez and a couple of her commie friends. And one of the things they were given was this committee which is going to be pushing this new Green Deal. So we have Elizabeth Warren now saying that she's not totally embracing the new Green Deal, but she supports the idea of a new Green Deal. Well, there she goes already. She hasn't even got out of the starting gates, and she's already having to try to negotiate a position, because she knows that a new Green Deal is not popular. It's not going to play well in the red states. It's not going to play well in the purple states. It's not going to play well in the heartland where she has to win. So Elizabeth Warren is already starting to modify herself and trying to move to the center, but she'll have to move back to the left in the primaries. So she's going to be bouncing back and forth between the left and the center and the left and the center, trying to find that middle ground, and she'll never find it. And she's dingy as hell, by the way, anyway, which you guys all know. So she doesn't necessarily support or embrace this new Green Deal, but she endorses or supports the idea of a Green Deal. Man, oh man, that's a typical politics speak that you just hate. Well, it looks like dingy Harry Reid is dying of pancreatic cancer, although he still has enough life left in him to attack Trump on his deathbed. But hopefully, dingy Harry will achieve room temperature very, very soon, and we'll be rid of him too, and he'll end up right in the same place as Senator Magoo and all their friends. That will probably be in the fire pits of hell. The Yellow Vests over the New Year's holiday torched over 1,000 cars in France, and let's see, it was absolute mayhem, is how it's being described. And now the Yellow Vests have moved a lot of their resources into northern France, and this is where most of these migrants congregate to. So it looks like they're now taking their protests right into the heart of the enemy territory, as opposed to just hitting government buildings and the more elite areas of France and the big cities and the high rent district. It looks like they're taking their protests directly into the neighborhoods where the migrants pretty much congregate or all get together. Now it appears that this is not anything new in France. Apparently every New Year's Eve they go out and burn cars. This is something I guess is tradition or something. But anyway, they did burn about 1,000 cars, and mostly this was done up in the northern area of France where all these migrants have a tendency to congregate. So, and then we have, of course, Macron coming out and making a nasty statement against the Yellow Vests and criticizing them or whatever. So that's the tact he's now taking. This situation is not getting any better. It's only getting worse. And the presidency of Macron is destroyed. It is ruined at this point. I don't think it's recoverable. It's just going to be grueling for the folks there in France and for everyone else, quite honestly, to have to watch the day-by-day unraveling of Macron as he's slowly on that Bataan death march to being a failed politician like his predecessor. Judicial Watch has now received smoking gun documents that show Clinton and Obama were aware of arms going to Syria through Benghazi, and that both were supporting the terrorists in Syria. Tom Fitton wants to know if this is why Flynn was targeted, because Michael Flynn would have known all of this. Very, very likely. And this is just more evidence of what I said just in a couple videos ago, is that Hillary lied directly to Rand Paul. Rand Paul asked the rotten Reverend Clinton right there in the Benghazi hearings if she was aware of any weapons being moved through Libya into anywhere. Just weapons being moved through Libya. Are you aware of any weapons being moved through Libya? And the rotten Reverend Clinton said no. She danced and wiggled around it, but Rand Paul finally forced her to give a yes or no answer, and her answer was no. She lied. Lying to Congress. What happens when you lie to Congress? Well, now the new rule is, now that when you lie to Congress, you get indicted. Unless, of course, you're a Democrat. Democrats are allowed to lie to Congress. That's the way it appears. That's what the evidence shows us, does it not? Of course, Benghazi was a gun-running operation. I said Benghazi was a gun-running operation back when the entire 9/11 event happened. When the attack on Benghazi happened, within 2 or 3 days, I came out and said, okay, well, obviously they'll run a gun-running operation. That's what Christopher Stevens does. He is a guy who handles the movement of weapons in war-torn areas of the Middle East. That's his specialty. That's why he was put in there in Benghazi. Benghazi essentially was a cover for a gun-running operation. It wasn't even like a real embassy. That's why it was so minimally staffed and secured, because it was really meant to be just an outpost, just some place where Christopher Stevens could have an office where he could manage the arms, a movement of arms through the area. That was the whole point. And something obviously happened, something went badly wrong, and then they had to cover it all up. It was a gun-running operation, and now Tom Fitton has more evidence to prove it. and the Rotten Reverend Clinton lied right to Rand Paul's face. Rand Paul should immediately contact Mr. Whitaker, have him watch the video. Then they need to produce the evidence that Fitton's got and other people have produced, whistleblowers and things, and they need to indict the Rotten Reverend Clinton. I won't hold my breath. Jerry Nadler, Elijah Cummings, and Adam Schiff are ready to pounce. They say that they have full subpoena power and they're going to use it. They are now, as they are taking over today, they are announcing that there will be immediate rounds of investigations. President Trump has given a 4-month time frame for the withdrawal of troops in Syria. Excellent. That's exactly what he should have done. He wanted to get it out now. But then he come back and say, oh, well, there's still 1%. We only got 99%. There's still 1%. And I'm sure he said, okay. You want to bust my balls? Okay, well, I'll tell you what. How long is it going to take you to wipe out the last 1% to make you happy? And they probably said, oh, well, maybe 6 months. He probably said, nah, got to do it faster than that. 5 months? Nah, got to do it faster than that. And they probably negotiated it down to 4 months. He's given them 4 months, whatever their great plan is, to get that last 1%, as if you're ever going to get rid of all these people. And the funny thing is that most of the ISIS and Al-Qaeda terrorists in Syria, most of them were killed by Assad's forces and with help from the Russians and the Iranians. We were arming those because our purpose in there was never to kill Al-Qaeda or ISIS or anything like that. Obama administration, as we've been learning, was arming them, helping them, training them, supporting them. Our target was Assad. We were there to take out Bashar al-Assad. That's why we were there. And that's why they're so upset. Because they wanted to take out Assad. He's not going anywhere. And it was Assad's government forces, along with help from the Russians, that were knocking the hell out of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And the fact is, the reason they probably need another 4 months is they probably need to get in there and cover their tracks and cover up the fact that they were arming Al-Qaeda and all the rest, and that it's not just the previous administration officials who were involved in that. There's probably many people, CIA, military people, people over the Pentagon, who were involved in the same operations. And they don't want Trump to get the bad news that we've been arming and training, because that's exactly the type of information that he could get from Putin. But my thoughts is that I would not be the least bit surprised if sometime in the next 4 months, before the final pullout date, that we don't have some event go down in Syria, some event that will force Trump's hand and force him to stick around, something like a false flag attack, something like another gas attack or something that they can blame on Assad. They need some reason to make the case to Trump that we got to stay there, and that what we really need to do is to take out Assad, because that was the purpose of being there in the first place. We were never there to knock out ISIS or Al-Qaeda. We were there to arm and train them, to turn them on Assad. Exact same thing we did to the Russians in Afghanistan, and all through then. And once they saw how successful that was, they said, hey, we can do this all over the Middle East. And that's when we really began this entire process of radicalizing, arming, and training, and helping these radicals. We use them as a proxy army to get back at guys that we don't like Assad and the Iranians and anyone else. They're our rent-a army. That's who they are. Al-Qaeda and ISIS is the rent-a army for the United States, Israel, the Saudis, and all the other dirty, dirty players involved in this shit show that they call foreign policy misadventure. So today, Nancy Pelosi got the gavel and the Democrats took over the House of Representatives. What you can expect is gridlock and chaos. That is the plan. This is, of course, the beginning of the 2020 campaign, and the goal is going to be to use every tool in the box to try to destroy Trump, to drive his popularity ratings down so low that he would be possibly could be challenged by another Republican. Certainly anything that can drive him down in the polls and give the Democrats some chance of winning in 2020. And the best way to do that is to destroy Trump. It's been going on for 2 years now. It's not going to stop. In fact, they're only going to press on the gas. And now that they've got Uncle Bob coming out with his report, we're told we have other investigations going on. The Congress is now going to investigate. We have Republicans working against Trump from the inside. Most of the people around him are traitors, ready to stab him in the back. So it's going to be a very, very rough ride, but I have faith in Trump, and there are some good people around him, not many. I hope he knows who the good guys and bad guys are. I'm pretty sure he does, and we'll just have to watch and see. Most of you know what I have recommended. Of course, on the situation with the wall, I've recommended not to back down off the $5 billion for the wall. And in fact, what he should do is use the military Corps of Engineers to build the wall, and then keep the government shutdown going until 2020. I think every day it works in our favor as long as they have a good PR campaign. Now, they don't really have a good PR campaign at this point, but it looks like Sean Hannity is going to do something very similar to what I suggested, which is have a special segment every day that you point out felony crimes committed by illegals in the country. Every single day you highlight 2 or 3 of these and keep that process going. It appears that Hannity is putting together some sort of a deal like that, where every day he is going to highlight and focus criminal activity, felonious activity by illegals in the country, and highlight that every day during the shutdown. Very good. Maybe he watches my videos, I don't know, or someone told him, hey, you should do this. So at least Sean Hannity or someone on his team is following my advice, but it should be handled out of the White House. But at least way someone's doing it. I also believe that Trump needs to fire Rodenstein, and I believe he needs to fire Mueller. And there's several different ways to do that. And I think he needs to do both things. And I think he needs to take control by declassifying all the information. He needs to tell Whitaker to appoint a special counsel, and he needs to let the chips fall where they may. Let it all hang out. Let it all hang out. Drop everything you got. The next 2 years are going to be the final push to destroy him. And you can't score if you're not on offense. You can't be on he's been on defense for 2 years. At some point, you got to get the ball back. You got to go on offense. And you got to make a bold move. I just don't see Mueller going away. Rodenstein is the sentry. He's the guy protecting Mueller. You got to get rid of both Rodenstein and Mueller. I say fire them both. Fire them both. And then if people want to raise hell, call for impeachment hearings, go ahead. They're going to do it anyway. No matter what you think the negative repercussions are of firing Mueller, firing Rodenstein, and the whole 9 yards, declassifying, whatever you think the negative ramifications of that are, they cannot be any worse than what's going to happen already. What, are they going to hate Trump even worse? I mean, they're already going to do the absolute maximum damage to him that they can. It can't get any worse. It cannot get any worse. The only difference is, if he does what I suggested, he will be on offense for a change. Just my opinion. Now, as most of you know, I'm very interested in this deal that went on with those mystery envelopes at the Bush funeral. I'm continuing to look at more and more video because we keep finding and discovering more video popping up on that. So I'm continuing to look at that. I think this is fascinating because I think it's really important and I think it's substantial. I think something about this matters. Not that I ever think that anytime in the near future we're going to find out what was in them envelopes, unless one or some of them people actually come out and say it, but they're obviously not doing that. But I think it's critical. So whatever happened, just the expressions on their faces, whatever they all saw or read or what have you, was something extremely important. I mean, it's something that matters. I really do believe that. But what is probably the most amazing thing about all this is the fact that you know that everyone in the news media knows about this. Everyone knows about it. New York Times, the Washington Post, major cable TV networks, all these independent reporters, they all know. But it's amazing because it's almost like there's a complete blackout. A complete blackout. They're not even talking about it, not even bringing it up, yet they all know. Now, they're probably just as curious to know, and behind the scenes, they probably are trying to find out, you know, what was in them envelopes and what was going on with that. But there's almost like a complete order from somebody across the media, the entire corporate media, including Fox, not to say a word about that. And that's why it tells us it's so important that it is something of substance. It is something that matters, is because of the treatment it's getting. It's getting complete crickets, despite the fact that the entire media knows it happened. Nobody is even raising a peep about it. You're not even hearing it even being discussed. Not even on a show like, The Five, where they kind of, it's like half comedy and half, news or whatever. You don't like Gutfield and Jesse, what's his name, that kind of do like a little bit of comedy mixed in with their politics. You don't even hear them in a humorous or joking fashion showing them opening the envelopes or talking about it. It's just completely off limits. It's not allowed. And that has to be coming from the highest authorities at the corporate media. The highest authorities have put the clamp down. Nothing about this envelope, the mystery envelopes, the expressions on their faces, the reactions, none of this is to be talked about. None of this is to be written about, reported on, or anything else. There's a complete blackout on this. Why? Why? Because it's something very, very significant and very important. So I continue to watch it. So I continue to watch these videos of this, and I continue to look for any clues I can. So I just was watching about a couple hours of video over the weekend, and I just jotted down some notes of things that some of these things I think have been brought up by other people or myself, but there's some new things here that I've observed, and there's some other information coming out. I don't know if it's verified, just things that people are saying, but I'm going to go ahead and cover just a little bit of this at the end of the video here. So the first question that pops across my mind is who would have had access and authority to deliver these notes? Who would have had access and authority to deliver the notes? Well, certainly one of them people would have been George W. Bush. I mean, he, after all, he is the senior son of Bush 41, the guy the funeral is for. So Bush certainly and the family would have been involved in somehow communicating with the people who put on the funeral in Washington, and I'm sure that's some bureaucrats in Washington that handle state funerals. But of course you have the Secret Service and the military honor guard is involved in this. So there's probably quite a few different people who are represented who play a role in putting on a state funeral like that. But the Bush family are certainly in communication with and are part of the planning of this. And so certainly George W. Bush would have been someone who could have been someone in a position that could have made sure to have some of these notes inserted into specific envelopes of individuals he wanted to get them to. But it's also that Trump would have had that type of access. And there was probably a few other people, maybe in the higher levels of the planning, who might have had access. Maybe some Secret Service would have had access, some military intelligence, something like that. There are probably quite a few handfuls of people that would have had some kind of ability to get those envelopes put into certain programs, but there would have been a certain amount of authority that would have needed for that to happen, because again, this is a funeral for former president. So it's almost hard to imagine that the notes could have got put into those programs without someone of pretty high authority, either in the Bush family or at the White House, meaning Trump, or someone working directly for Trump, having something to do with that, or someone high up in the Bush family, meaning likely George W. Bush, or someone that represents him. Someone very high up with a lot of authority and access would have had to have been involved in making sure that those notes got put into the right programs. I noticed another thing. Everyone that got the envelopes or were told about what may have been in the envelopes had that shock look on their face, very troubled look on their face, very concerned look on their face, something very, very shocking on all the looks, on all the faces of people who got that. Very troubled looks. Clearly something really rocked their world, right? Everyone but George W. Bush. He's the only one that did not have a surprised look on his face at all. From the moment he walked in there, he looked rattled as hell. And as Laura Bush was passing that over to Jeb, that look on W's face was torture. It almost looked a lot like the face of someone who's very ashamed of something they have done, someone who's been caught or had to admit to something that they're guilty of. It was the look of guilt, the look of shame, the look of despair, a lot of different looks, but George W. Bush was the only one who did not have the look of shock on his face. His wife was shocked, Jeb was shocked, Hillary was shocked, the Obamas were shocked, the Bidens were shocked, everyone was shocked except W. He was not shocked. He looked to be ashamed and tortured by what was happening. Now, W. Bush is captured writing something, and then it appears that just as the casket is coming by, he nudges Laura, who looks down. Then Laura takes the program. She shows it to Jeb. So W initiated this, and it's just as the casket is going by, which is a very strange occurrence. It's just like the other very strange notes that were received by other people there. So W. Bush is the most likely suspect, in my opinion, as who is behind this mystery. W. Bush, or possibly Trump. But I believe W. Bush is most likely the one who is behind this mystery, or knows what was going down and why. And I also believe it has something to do with Poppy Bush, because when Jeb and Laura see it, if you look at that screenshot, everyone's looking at the casket. Everyone around them got their hand over their heart. They're looking at the casket. Laura and Jeb see the note. Then they kind of turn. First, Jeb does look at the casket. Then he shifts a little more this way, and he seems to be looking at Trump. Laura is looking directly, appears to be looking directly at Trump and giving a very dirty look. So the facial reactions tell us a lot about what may have been going on there. But whatever W. Bush wrote, it was very short and very bitter. Because if you look at that again, you'll see that Jeb literally had no time to read anything. Laura gets his attention. He kind of looks that direction down, then back, then down again. He does a very quick double take. But you can see he's not reading anything. He looks at something and it's immediately identified as something really troubling or really bad. He takes his hand off his heart. He kind of looks like this, almost like there's a note there that says like Poppy's not in the casket, or maybe like, Poppy was cremated this morning, or something that gives you the impression that he's looking at the casket like, whoa. So there's something. It's something about his dad and that casket going by. Something's going on there. Then he looks over at Trump. So I think it had something to do with Poppy Bush. And again, I believe that what the Bushes got, what W handed Laura and she showed Jeb, I think is different than what everyone else got. But I think they're all related to the same thing. If you look at the Obamas and the Clintons, they actually were reading something. They actually were looking down at something and were reading it, which took a couple of seconds, several seconds. But with Jeb and Laura, it didn't take reading anything, really. It was literally at a glance. I mean, almost immediate. Jeb looks at it and boom, it's like, it took him no time to really read anything. He saw something that very, very quickly, he was able to make a lot of sense out of. The Secret Service agents were, of course, watching the Bushes intently as the note was being passed. Everyone else was turned facing the casket, mostly with hands on their hearts. The Secret Service agents knew exactly what W was doing and about the timing. And again, you go look at it, you'll see that everyone's head is looking at the casket that's going by. But those Secret Service agents, they're not. They're watching W, Laura, and Jeb. They're totally focused on those three. They know that something's going on there. Did you also notice the death stare that Dick Cheney gave Trump? And the looks on everyone's faces when Trump comes into the room. And there's a rumor that Cheney got an envelope too, and that he opened his beforehand, and that they didn't capture it on camera. At least we don't have the camera shot of it. But clearly, Cheney was giving Trump the long, long, hard death stare. You watch the Bidens, it appears that Joe gets the envelope in his hand, but he actually doesn't have time to look at it. Just as he's got it in his hand, it appears that Right Reverend Clinton turns around and says something to both Biden and his wife. They both immediately react with kind of shock and horror. So whatever the Right Reverend Clinton said to the Bidens certainly got their attention, but it doesn't appear that they actually had a chance to read the envelope before Hillary said something to them. I believe at this point that what was written there, and I don't have time for the rest of this, so I'll try to get to it tomorrow, but I believe that that there was some sort of code, some sort of numbers or letters or a word, something that was like a code that means something they could look out very quickly, but tells them a lot. So I'll get more into that as we move on. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good night. Goodbye.